All right, so the last part is resistance in a parallel circuit. So we want to answer the question, how does adding more resistors in parallel affect the overall resistance? Okay, all right, and then you're going to need some kind of evidence of that. So let's go back to the simulation. Okay, and oops, let me just delete all this stuff so we can start fresh. Okay, all right, so you're going to go ahead and start with this. I'm going to go ahead and put my ammeters back in this time. Okay, and remember, I need to have these 2 ammeters right by the battery before I do any of the branching, okay? All right, and then I'm going to create a branch, okay, like this. So here's my base circuit, all right? And then I'm going to go ahead and add another branch. Okay, and I'm going to take a look at this, okay? So again, remember, for the resistance, just like with series, there's no direct way to measure the resistance, okay, in a parallel circuit or in any of this simulator. So we have to rely on the current, okay? So we're not really looking at the current through each branch for this part, okay? We want to know when I add more branches, what happens to the overall current, which means this one or this one next to the battery, okay? The more branches that I put in, the more branches that I add, what happens to the overall current? Okay, so I'm going to keep adding branch after branch after branch, and I'm looking at what happened to the overall current. Okay, and from that, I'm going to infer what happened to the resistance. Okay, so just like before, okay, we had, okay, we have Ohm's law again, I equals V over R, which is Ohm's law. All right, and remember that graph we had was resistance and current looks like this, means they're inversely related, right? So the higher the resistance, the lower the current, right? The easier it is to get through the circuit, the more current there is. The harder it is to get through the circuit, the less current there is. All right, so what you're trying to show here in your evidence is if you have a battery, right, and then you have your resistors like this, okay, and you're looking at the current that happened here next to the battery, all right? When you add more resistors in parallel and you create more paths, right, what happens to that current? If that current goes up, that means it's an easier place to travel, okay? If the current goes down, that means it's a harder place to travel, okay? So you need to look at your evidence and decide, okay, based on what happened with the overall current here next to the battery, was this circuit overall easier to get through now when you add more branches, or is it more difficult? All right, and then start to think about why that is, and we'll talk about it in the wrap-up.